you are at Careers After Cinema Studies. And what we're going to be doing for the next 2 hours is a fairly informal conversation with 3 alumni of the Cinema Studies Institute. So Theresa Wang is a curator and writer based in Toronto, where she is currently director and curator at Mercer Union, a center for contemporary art. Her practice considers ways in which narratives are destabilized and reconfigured, and is particularly interested in questions pertaining to concepts of truth, knowledge, meaning, and memory. She was recently associate curator and registrar at Oakville Galleries. She's held curatorial and audience development positions at institutions including the Art Museum at the University of Toronto, the Gardner Museum, and the Musée d'Art Contemporain at Lyon. She is an alumna of the 2021 Professional Alliance for Curators of Color and the recipient of a 2022 Galleries Ontario Galleries Exhibition Award. Theresa graduated with a minor in cinema studies in 2018. Next to Theresa is Alaine Hutton, who is part of a performing, writing, directing, designing duo with a decade of shared training in physical performance and making people uncomfortable. They create questionably comedic theater, film, and digital, not otherwise specified, often revolving around the internet ruining our brains, distorting our sexualities, and how we can't stop looking at it. You can watch their speculative fiction / cringe comedy series Content Farm streaming on CBC Gem, and also in Innis Town Hall on April 23rd.
With a sweet Q&A.
With a sweet Q&A. So you're going to get a lot of Alaine, which is awesome. And Alaine graduated with a minor in cinema studies in 2011. So Dylan Rykse is the senior media specialist at Media Commons. In this role, he manages the film collections and screening rooms at Robarts Library. Prior to his current position, he was the reference specialist at the University of Toronto Music Library and a librarian at the Toronto Public Library. He graduated with a major in cinema studies in 2016.
So I think my career path sort of began before I arrived at CSI, because I really always wanted to be a librarian. Always heavy library user. I've been a lifelong collector, just a very organized person. So I feel like I was just born to be a librarian. And before I got to university, I was thinking about this very traditionally, like librarians work with literature. And prior to my undergrad here, I did a 1-year independent music production program at Seneca College, York University, where I discovered their sound and moving image library, which was a real eye-opener for me, because I did not realize up until that point that there were these kind of dedicated special collections. And so from that point on, I was still very determined to be a librarian, but I thought it would be even better if I could land a gig at one of these kind of specialized places. At that point in time, I was thinking it would be great if I could go to like a music library. So I started my undergrad here. I was an English major and doing a minor in music history and culture. My life changed quite dramatically. One day in an English tutorial, when an instructor showed a clip from Metropolis, which I was sort of vaguely familiar with, but I had never seen before. And just during the clip, I felt the pull of cinema studies. And by the end of it, I had just made up my mind that I needed to get into cinema studies classes as soon as possible. And so that is what I did. I was a very casual film watcher up until that point in time, but basically overnight, my cinephilia just blossomed. Became a cinema studies major. Yeah, and I mean, to this day, I've been more or less a film a day kind of person. So as a student, I was a heavy U of T libraries user. I took out a lot of books, really took advantage of the electronic resources, really took advantage of the physical space over there. I was one of the students who would be working on essays until Robarts closed pretty much every night of the week. And then when I discovered the Media Commons over there, which for any of you who are not familiar with Media Commons, it is the amazing physical film collection on the 3rd floor of Robarts. When I found this out, I was just blown away. The collection is amazing. One particularly attractive thing to me was the extensive Blu-ray collection. Then, as is the case now, very, very uncommon for any institution to even buy any Blu-rays at all. But we have invested very, very heavily into this. A lot of space, money, time, I think rightfully. So it's really, the collection has only gotten better since then. So, I would be at cinema classes here, then writing about cinema for hours at the library, and then I would pop by Media Commons, pick up some films to watch that night at home. And I was just thinking, all of this work hopefully is going to go into my eventual getting a job at Media Commons. That was my specific goal. I just thought that's the dream. That's what I am doing all of this for. So my last year of my undergrad, they posted a student library assistant position at Media Commons. I was very determined to get this job. I worked very hard on the application, very hard on the cover letter. Certainly, those were factors that helped me get the job. Also, the fact that I was a cinema studies student and I had this plan to go into librarianship, specifically into media librarianship. And there's two other things. Is just some advice for folks who are maybe looking for a student library job. I've sat on enough student library hiring committees now that I've identified a few of the missteps. So one, if you are going to apply to a job like that, provide really good availability, because if you don't, it can kind of be a real deciding factor. When I applied, I was basically making myself available to Media Commons whenever they needed me. And I soon developed this reputation for just being available really at the drop of a hat, which was great for them because they had somebody they could rely on. It was great for me because I loved working there. And I got all these extra hours that I had no idea that I was going to get when I first signed on. And the other thing is that I had never worked in a library before. My only real work experience was 5 years at Canadian Tire. And when I have been reading through student applications for student jobs, I find these jobs are quite frequently buried on resumes. People don't embrace them, but actually, these jobs are not easy. And a lot of the skills that you develop at these jobs are totally applicable and totally transferable. I mean, I had 5 years of customer service experience. I had experience searching in a database, retrieving items from the warehouse, all things that were very similar to the kind of work that I was doing at Media Commons. So I wound up working as an SLA at Media Commons for 3 full years. So it was my last year of my undergrad here, and then my 2 years of library school. So it's a Master of Information degree, which I did at the iSchool, which is in the Bissell building just across the street. Is Robarts adjacent. And yeah, I mean, during my time there, it was my home away from home. Really just got to know that collection inside and out, built really strong relationships with all of our users, students, staff, faculty. At that time, Robarts was open to the general public. And looking around at my colleagues, they were all around retirement age, and they were all constantly talking about retiring. So I was hoping that I could time it so that I would be graduating at the same time that they were retiring, and then I could kind of slide into this dream gig. But of course, I didn't,
No one can retire now.
Yeah. Oh, they did, but I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket. So in my 2 years when I was at the iSchool, I wanted to build up my resume. I did a lot of volunteer stuff, local film festivals like the Christie Pitts Film Festival. I'm familiar with that. I think more significantly, I did a practicum, and I would highly recommend if you have the opportunity, or really you should seek out the opportunity to do a practicum or a co-op or an internship, something where you can get practical work experience. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the case for me, but I can think of a bunch of my friends who did co-ops, and then it led to an actual permanent position, so it was great for them. So I was very fortunate to do my practicum at the TIFF Film Reference Library, which was great for me because it gave me the opportunity to work with a different film collection, because I was mainly doing reference item retrieval here at Media Commons, and at TIFF I was mainly doing cataloging. So I fulfilled my requirement for the practicum, the number of hours, and then I just volunteered to stay on months longer than the practicum. But it was great. So I stayed till the end of the summer that year, and then I returned the following summer just as a volunteer. And so by the time that I graduated, I felt a pretty strong resume. I felt like I was a pretty good candidate to get a senior position at Media Commons. But my colleagues retired, didn't quite work out. They didn't post these positions. Some of their duties kind of got merged with other jobs, and it just, I just had to roll with it. It was very disappointing, but what can you do? You have to, just take other opportunities. So fortunately, another amazing opportunity came up at that time. And in retrospect, it's from a professional development perspective, it's much better that I left Media Commons because I learned and accomplished so much more by leaving than I ever would have if I had just stayed on. So the music library, or the Faculty of Music, was hiring brand new position, reference specialists. And so again, I was very determined to get this job. Again, worked very hard on the application, very hard on the cover letter. At this point in time, I had 3 years of library experience, and so I got this job. And I have to say, I loved every day working at the music library. Music library was amazing, great team. I felt like had I wasn't really limited in any way. I could propose a lot of projects, see those through to completion, implement a lot of improvements. It was very, very satisfying work. Plus, it was just a great place to be, amazing collection, just kind of inspiring to be at the Faculty of Music. However, the library world, there's basically there's librarians who are traditionally, they're doing the high level thinking and high level work, and those folks have master's degrees. This is what I had. And then there's the library technicians who may or may not be required to have a library tech diploma, generally not. And so this didn't really bother me too much, but based on comments from my colleagues around U of T libraries, I started getting a little concerned that I was underemployed. And so after a year at music, which I loved, I started applying to other jobs. And I was offered a librarian position at the Toronto Public Library. I love TPL. I think it's one of my favorite things about living in the city. To be perfectly honest, I go to multiple branches multiple times a week still. TPL is an organization that is notoriously difficult to break into for an external candidate. A lot of people just start as pages when they're teenagers and they just stay there forever. And at that time, it was like almost unheard of for them to offer an external candidate a permanent position. So I felt like this was kind of a one-time chance, one-time opportunity. I felt like I had to take it. So I took it. I was there for 2 years. I learned a lot, proud of what I accomplished there, but it was really not the best fit. In my mind, what was great about that job is that as a librarian at TPL, you're in charge staff, you have a lot of responsibility, you're a leader, but I just felt like the day-to-day was nowhere near as satisfying or stimulating as my experience at music. Like just the range of duties, the complexity of things was just far more satisfying at music than it was at TPL. So 2 years later, they still not replaced me at music. So the position was posted again. I applied, I got the position again, and it was just like picking up where I had left off. It was great. Starting new projects, doing good work. It was awesome. I could have worked at the music library till the end of my career and been totally happy. I really can't say enough good things about the music library. And then this fall, out of the clear blue sky, this senior media specialist position comes up at the Media Commons. And over the past few years, I had gone from a very heavy Media Commons user to a very casual Media Commons user for a variety of reasons, but maybe you are aware of some of these changes, but there was a lot of changes to Media Commons with the closure of the desk, this change to this retrieval system, a lot of things on behind the desk and the staff. Yeah, a lot of changes behind the scenes. Staff left. It just was kind of a sad situation, and it's a really unique, one of a kind, amazing collection, and it was just seeing it sort of fade away. So I certainly did not anticipate that they would ever hire anyone again to work on this collection. And then this position came up. When I saw the position, my heart started racing. I thought, oh man, this means that they want someone to come in to turn things around. I feel like I can be a good advocate for it. And I realized like this is my dream job. This is the job that I wanted in 2018 when I went over to music. And 5 years later, it's here now. So again, worked very hard on that application, cover letter. But at this point in time, I had tons of library experience, accomplished so much. I had a great interview, I had a very personal connection to that library. And so it hasn't been a full 2 months since I've been working there, but I have to say it's a perfect fit. I really could not be happier. Yeah, so just a couple things, some advice. You will probably run into a situation where your expectations are built up, as mine were, and then things don't work out, and there are just other opportunities. I had no idea that music was going to be as good as it was going to be, and it turned out like that was really the best thing to happen to me because I learned so much. And also, like, obviously, your dream job is not going to be on the job boards every week. In this case, it was not on the job boards every year. So it just was a matter of time, and eventually something great came along. And I hope to be in this role for a very long time. That's my spiel.
Mazel tov.
Great answer. I feel like that was like the past lives librarian edition. You know what I mean? Like the love story between you and
Yes,
me. Missing each other 12 years past.
Yeah,
Yep.
Shakespearean thing. Yeah.
Well, the good news is if it's Shakespearean, it's a comedy and not a tragedy.
Yes.
You get married in the end.
Yes.
Alaine.
Okay. Wow. So a little history to how I got into cinema. I came to U of T to play basketball. I played on the U of T basketball team for 4 years. I had no idea what I was going to do. I kind of only knew I was good at getting things done, and I had a weird affinity to put a ball in a hoop. That was my sum total of skill sets upon arriving at U of T. And I had to pick some classes. They told me I also have to do that. So I took a wide variety. I took equity studies, I took media studies, I took psych and social and philosophy. And for 2 years, I kind of just hung out around campus and didn't know what Robarts was until my second year. When a senior girl on my basketball team was like, that big thing right there, that's a library. Go into it. Oh, cool. Nice. So I was a member of Vic, and I only picked that college because on my tour around, I was like, this is pretty. Look at the trees. Like, I had no idea what Vic was associated with, or I knew I didn't want to be with the jocks. I sort of felt, even though that was my only skill set, I was like, nah, I don't belong there. I actually don't belong there. And so my guidance counselor was like, okay, like you've been here 2 years, like you have to pick a major. Like you have to pick something. Like it's time now. Like you're not allowed to be here any longer without picking something. And I was like, well, I don't really want to do any of these things. Like nothing that I've taken, though very interesting. And I honestly believe the fates had me because let's say you needed a 72 to major in psychology. I got a 71. And you needed a 68 to major in sociology. I got a 65. So I didn't have options that I could just kind of default into. And I told my guidance counselor, I said, well, the only things I like doing is sort of like acting in plays and films. Like if you're asking me right now what I have to dedicate my entire life to, I've never said this before to anyone in my life. I've never said it to my parents, never best friend, boyfriend, nothing. And in that moment, they were like, okay, so like you've acted before. I was like, no. They're like, you took drama in high school. No. I was like, I watch movies. I really like them. They laughed in my face. They thought I was the most ridiculous, too old to be saying this person they had ever seen. And I said, you know what? Just point me in the direction of those places because I didn't know where they were. I didn't know where the drama department was or in this. I said, and I'll figure it out. So I spent a whole another year just getting into cinema studies, getting into the theater program. I had to audition 3 times for the drama program because they were like, I'm sorry, what? They also said that to me. And I was like, yeah. But you don't understand. I tried everything else and I don't like it. So I'm coming at you until you accept me because I have nowhere else to go. And so once I got in, I was like, oh, this is what reading and like caring about what you're studying and like wanting to go to the library feels like. oh, like I actually want to be in class now. Like, oh, okay. This makes it so much easier. Like to the point where I'm technically one class away from being a major in cinema, and part of me is like, I want to go back and take one damn class just so they know major. It's irrelevant.
We'll
So
take you back.
I know, right? So I really enjoyed, like, once I finally got into the programs that I actually wanted to do and actually cared about, I thrived. I did well. I showed up to class and I did my work and I really enjoyed it. And I graduated with a theater specialist. So that was sort of like what took all, I really liked performing. Coming from sports, like I liked moving my body, I liked creating, like that's what I wanted to do. And so I had a specialist in that, but I always came back here. I always took more classes than I needed. I filled up as many classes as I could from cinema. I loved being in media commons. I feel like I can't remember his name at this time because it was a long time ago. Um, but me and the librarian were on a first name basis.
Very nice.
Every moment I had, like, you know, in high school, I'd eat my lunch alone in the art room, but now it was me and the media commons librarian being like, hey, it's me again. I have like 40 minutes before I have to go to basketball practice that I don't really want to go to. So can I watch this movie and eat my lunch? And he was like, here you go, kid. Enjoy. Thanks. So then I graduated, did really well, graduated from theater, graduated from cinema, and was okay, now what? In the theater program, they did a really good job telling you you're not ready. You're not prepared. You're not trained. If you want to do this, this isn't enough training. You have to keep training. They told us that almost every day. They also said, if you can do anything else, please go do that. It's severely hard.
That's what I
Don't
tell my students who want
Yeah.
to get PhDs in humanities.
Yeah. If you can be a plumber, every year I check, can I be an electrician? Is there anything, could I be a nanny? Like, is there anything else I could do? And unfortunately, I keep coming back to that I can't really go anywhere else. So I graduated and I took a year to just kind of be like, oh, what is the working world look like? Like, what does it mean to be out of school and make my own decisions and deal with my own time? And I was like, wow, this is a nightmare. This is awful. This is really hard. Like, there's no structure anymore. There's no one making you go up to a certain pace. That's on you now, and you have to go find all your experiences. And after a year of that, and just kind of seeing like, okay, this is a slow process. This takes a long time, and I feel like I'm going to need something to give myself an edge, or to get more training, or to do that. So I went to Paris, France, to clown college, as my mother calls it. I don't know if she's bragging or not, but I think it's a brag. I went to a very famous physical theater, clown, and mime school and studied for a whole year. And it's being around people who are interested. That's what I miss about cinema studies as well. Being around people who are interested in the same types of things that you're in is the most life-giving thing you can do. So whatever you can do to continue keeping that sort of like community, keeping your pals and people who love what you love, huge. So when I went there, and there was 30 people in my class from all around the world, and we all wanted to make art with our bodies, out of nothing. You'd be given a prompt, and by Friday you'd have to come up with a show. And of course, the French, they hated every second of it. Maybe you get to perform like 48 seconds before they'd be like, no. Man. Oh, they just hated everything we did. But I was like, hey, I played sports and I went to U of T. So like, I barely understand what you're saying, the French. So like, you can't really hurt my feelings anymore. And I'm going to keep coming back here every week until you like what I do. So I knew I was only going to be there 1 year. I had a creative partner that I met at U of T back home, sort of waiting for me to come back for us to start making work. So while everyone else in my class was very stressed about getting into the next year because they sort of cut down the numbers from 30 to 15 or something like that, I was just like casually taking in the French air and like enjoying every minute of it because I wasn't stressed about like, will they accept me or not? I was just trying to get my craft better. So when I came home, me and my theater partner from U of T, we were like, we know we need to train. We know we want our art to be as good as it possibly can be. We're not worried about anything else right now. So we took all our skills from U of T and we wrote a lot of grants. And we got rejected on a lot of grants. And then we got a grant. And then we got another grant. And then we started making work. Then we started doing workshops. Then we started we would show up to our mentors in physical theater and in voice. And we'd be like, hi, we're your new best friend. We'll be at every one of your workshops. Hey, you need an admin person? We'll work for you. We'll do a trade. No problem. I'll be here. I'll be here. I'll be here until we got better and better and better and better. Because that's all we did. We sat around, we talked, we made things, we wrote shows, and we'd write them ourselves. Grants would give you this much money, and we'd make a show for this much money. AKA, we'd do all the things so it would be this good, even though we had this much money. That's kind of how life felt. I wasn't going to dampen my execution and dreams. We came from U of T, so our level of excellence is here. I don't care that you gave me $10. I don't really have lower than this. I just don't. I don't have a setting that says I'll settle for 55%. So we just learned how to do a bunch of other jobs. We became designers. We became directors. We became producers. I became an editor. Didn't matter. If there was something that needed to be done to make the work excellent, we learned how to do that. So even though I went to school in theory for theater to act, I now have 10 different skills. And thank God I went to cinema studies as well, because at least I have the brain that works. I had to learn all the technical skills. Yes, of course. Same with going to theater school. I had to use my own technical skills. I had to keep learning that over and over and over and over again, year after year, after year after year. And so U of T gave me the baseline and the direction and what I needed in order to pursue that. And so we've adapted a Camus, The Misunderstanding, and we've written 3 original plays, and we produced them all and designed them and directed them. We're in them and just do the whole thing. Almost all of them, except for the Camus adaptation, have always had video in it. At the time, we were just we can't tell what we want to tell on stage without being able to also include some sort of video element. There's more we have to say. There's more about this world we want to show. So that was a slow progression in our work over time. And then we were lucky enough, literally the month before the pandemic hit, we got a grant to make digital work. So we got $50K to make our first 10-minute digital demo of an idea. And all of our theater, peers, obviously we all experienced it, but the whole industry was shut down, absolutely gone. And there we were sitting with all this money and this opportunity to the equivalent of put ourselves through film school, because $50K was still in film world, not that much. And even though it was we have $50K, we're cool, we're going to make something $150K's worth, even though we have this bit of money. So we learned how to make a call sheet and organize a schedule and how does production work and who do you need, practical things in cinema I had never learned, and sort of translated all of our theater skills into what does it mean to run a set, and who do you need and how do you pay them and how does that work. And then we carried on and we got into the second phase of that grant, which gave us $200K to make whatever we wanted, which was a digital series. Lots of people made a short film, or they made an audiobook, or they did a bunch of other things. But again, we took this opportunity to maximize, okay, we have this bit of money and we want to make things. We want to make things with long narrative arcs. We want to make things that unpack a lot of things. Yes, technically that amount of money could probably give you everybody got paid really nicely and you had a casual time and you could make 10 minutes. You make about 10 minutes for that much money. And we're no, we're going to make 48 minutes. We're going to make 3 episodes. We're going to make a whole arc. We're going to show you what we can do. Even though I'm going to have to take on jobs I've never done before. And I'm going to have to work way longer and slower than if I could pay someone to do it. But I want it to be exactly as good as I need it to be because it's going to reflect who I am, what I can do, what I want to say. So I'm going to take this opportunity and I'm going to hit the ground running and I'm going to make it happen. And that is the show that is screening in a couple weeks. And from there, so let's say that was about a year ago, it has just progressed. We continue to make theater. We have a new show that we're in development that we have 4 grants for. So it's just like we got some grants and we got an opportunity to make theater. Boom, we make theater. Then we got opportunity to make digital, make animation, make short films, help people in that world. A lot of people actually I still work with today are from YouTube, like so many of them. So I went through all this journey, sort of following what I wanted to do, but also taking whatever opportunities I could get and sort of like maximizing them all the time so that I could continuously push to be like, hey, this is actually the level that I want to make. So I'm going to have to prove to you over and over and over again that I can do it, that it's interesting. And then we'll just keep finding the money, filtering it in. So I went from being like, I actually still help out at the basketball team at U of T, but I went from a like fairly intense jock with no other skill set to being like, hey, as long as I have the passion and the direction to do this, like that's what I needed. And then I took all of my dedication and discipline and hardworkingness and all that, and I just funnel it towards that thing more or less endlessly.
You look at me when you said
Well, you just said like you're always that we have to always be working on our careers and always advancing.
yes.
That it was a never ending.
Yeah. Or I was saying that career anxiety is a never ending thing, but so the grind is also never ending.
Yes,
So.
the work ethic and the anxiety, they go together. I just assumed that was so that's fine.
Thank you,
Sure.
Alaine. Okay. Teresa.
Could you remind me of the original?
Yeah, the question is where are you now and how did you get there?
So I work in contemporary art, and I was always, since high school, I knew that I wanted to be within this realm. I had done an internship at a commercial art gallery, and that really opened my eyes to working with artists, the potential that art could generate and inspire transformation and discovery. So when I arrived here at U of T, I knew I was going into an art history major. I also went to FIC, and I was part of a relatively new FIC 1 program at the time called the Market 5 stream, which focused on all forms of visual arts, including cinema. Each semester was focused on a different medium. And I also arrived at UT a burgeoning cinephile. I came into U of T feeling like there were so many opportunities to develop my career. I was very motivated and feeling a little bit directionless in terms of how to secure opportunities. So I became very proactive and secured like an internship in my first year at a commercial gallery here in Toronto called Corkin Gallery that specializes in photography. I was quite interested in media, new media, and moving image at that time, and was also interested in cinema and philosophy. I didn't get into cinema studies until the summer after my first year, however, and I very I hurried along to finish the first year prerequisite program, and then once I was fully in it in second year, I felt so open to the possibilities of the cinema studies program, and it became one of my favorite things about being here at U of T. I think what I really appreciated about it was how to read a film and analyze it as an actual text. And the art history program was very broad strokes overview. So when I knew that I wanted to focus on contemporary art, um, it became clear to me that it was the intersection of contemporary art and moving image that was most attractive to me. And I continued to look at internships. I later on worked at C Magazine because I was interested in writing and publishing, writing art reviews. In my third year, I did a year abroad. Speaking of, the opportunities that are here at U of T, you can get so many academic credits towards something that is a really like fulfilling personal journey as well. So I just go to France as well, and I went to Lyon because I was really enamored with just the film history there. The Lumiere brothers, feature strongly. The time there. At the Institute film really opened my eyes to the like different ways to engage with cinema. The sort of cinema literacy and patronage in Europe it was also really encouraging. So when I came back in my final year at U of T, I knew I wanted to take seminars. I was a minor, and so technically I didn't have the prerequisites to sign up to the seminars. But I wanted to do one that was right in my sort of interest of combining um, aesthetics, theory, and expanded moving image. It was a class on 3D cinema, and I bugged everyone in the department, including the instructor, to let me in. And if I can offer a word of advice to really be proactive about what you want out of your like academic journey, and to advocate for yourself. If you believe you have the prerequisites, for instance, I did because of my, my education in art history, that opened me as a candidate for this class, and that was a really transformative class for me. The thesis or I call it a thesis, but really it's the final paper of that I developed in that class ended up being something that I submitted to the Society of Cinema and Media Studies undergraduate conference. I got to meet um, amazing peers and from other universities. Um, the essay then got published uh, in Silo. I also spoke on the same topic at a Spiral Film Conference, which was it's a graduate conference. I think it's organized by York University, and that was again. I didn't know if I was qualified necessarily because I again was a graduate student, but I submitted nonetheless and got in, and that um, was very affirming, and I think was the beginning of what rooted me into like a community of academics, of artists who were really interested in like expanded cinema. Um, and following graduation, um, these networks that I had started to establish really started to flourish. So, for example, at the Spiral Film Conference, I met an artist who was developing like a writing workshop about writing the moving image and what does it mean to have like a textual practice alongside like a moving image practice. That workshop was like a closed workshop of less than 10 participants, and it culminated in an online publication. And I got to spend close time writing an essay that challenged my own writing style and my research capacity, even though I was already out of school. Um, at the same time, I was maintaining my contemporary art network. In my undergraduate time at U of T, I was part of the Hart House Art Committee, which is a student committee focused on the promotion of contemporary art and education around contemporary art. And the advisors around it are affiliated with the Art Museum at the University of Toronto. At the time, it was the Justina M. Barnaky Gallery at the University of Toronto Arts Center. So through my involvement as a student on the committee, I became very close to the Art Museum staff. And following my graduation, I applied for a Young Canada Works position for recent graduates. This is a federal government funded program. Usually it's about 8 to 10 months long, and it's a great starting off point. They sort of characterize it as an internship. The most institutions, like arts institutions and heritage institutions, will ensure that there is this capacity for growth to develop towards like an assistant level role. So during my time at the art museum, I was the curatorial assistant, and I worked on a wide range of activities like education and outreach, giving tours and developing contacts within the university, and giving tours to the student faculty on the exhibitions that were on view at the galleries, and then also participated in the development of large scale events like the Night of Ideas, which was done in partnership with the Consulate of France. And throughout that time, I kept wanting to make that connection back to cinema. I knew eventually I wanted to be a curator. I didn't quite know how to get there yet, but I knew if I was a curator, I would make moving image a part of my practice and interests. As my time at the art museum at UT was coming up, I saw a job opening at Oakville Galleries. And for anyone who doesn't know what Oakville Galleries is, it's a contemporary art museum that is in the town of Oakville, about 30 minutes west of here, just next to Mississauga. And it's the only contemporary arts institution in southern Ontario that is completely focused on contemporary art and also has a collection dedicated to contemporary art. I hope that is still the case. Because I know I'm heard here, but that's what differentiates.
You've heard it here, folks.
That's what differentiates it, for instance, from like the MoCA or the Power Plant here in Toronto. They don't have collections. So I applied for this job. It's very intimidating because one of the requirements was that you needed to have a graduate degree. You needed to have a graduate degree in art history. And then when I was writing my application, I was pulling from all of my experiences, just like Dylan was recommending. Like even an internship, you learn so much from this, and you can connect everything together and tailor it to the application. You have to really think about what are they looking for, and do your research. Do go above and beyond in your research when you apply for a job. For example, when I applied for the Oakville Galleries job, I looked for a strategic plan. I wanted to know what their 5-year or 10-year plan was, and I found this document that talked about this long-term goal of they have these two galleries, it's called Oakville Galleries, but they wanted to build a single-use dedicated facility. So then I prepared and like just read up on everything about Oakville Galleries. I couldn't believe it when I got an interview, and when I had the interview, I spoke to everything I knew about Oakville Galleries, and I think that is what made me stand out as an applicant. And then when I got the job, it was amazing. I was there for 2019 to 2023, and during that time, I learned a lot about what it means to put an exhibition together. I got firsthand experience working with artists who were interested in image, such as Tanya Lupin Linklater or Timothy Yannick Hunter, Canadian artists who are really advancing the field of like moving image and new media in Canada. And I also got to work on the commissioning of new work. As an institution, you have the capacity sometimes to work with an artist to develop entirely new work for the purposes of presentation. And I got to work with a couple of projects that were like that. And I also got to work on community engagement and partnership building in Oakville. As you can imagine, a town like Oakville has its own local demographics, but the gallery itself had a very wide national and international reach. So I got to learn about how to balance all of these different interests and how to localize the international and how to expand the reach of Canadian artists and embed them within a larger international global conversation. Um, and as after the pandemic, after a few years at Oakville, I was looking for something new, and I heard inklings about an opportunity that would come up at Mercer Union, which is a center of contemporary art here in Toronto, by Flying Lansing. And this was a real dream job for me because Mercer Union is historically it's an artist-run center. So since its founding in 1979 by a group of artists, it's become it's an institution in Canada that is very reputable. It's sort of like an ICA, like an Institute of Contemporary Art or Kunsthalle, but has that artist-run ethos of collaboration, of working side by side with artists to produce exciting new work. And over the years, it's also developed a reputation of amazing moving image installations. So I felt like this was a perfect fit. I applied for the job. Again, it was a job that really encouraged I think with their masters. But I was eventually I got it, and it's been I think I started in August, and it's been an incredible
recent
job.
it's been an incredible journey. I think what I really learned from cinema studies was this this level of like proactiveness to pursue a vision, to trust your intuition if you feel like you have something to offer to a place. For me, I think it was despite I think the uh, a worry about needing a specialized degree or like a specialized focus, it was actually the diversity of my experiences that continued to make me stand out, and it was also the understanding of how art and moving image and cinema can offer like a mediated experience, and the relationship that an audience can have to art is something that like I learned from cinema studies, watching movies in this very room. Yeah.
I'm falling asleep in the heat. Can I generalize a couple of things, and then I'm going to skip the what did you learn in cinema studies that got you to where you are, because I feel like you all did kind of answer that question, but I'm going to ask about regrets in a minute. So, the first thing that I want to say, and this is the theme that comes up every year that we do this, and it's really, really crucial, is that the preparation for a career after a liberal arts degree like cinema studies happens outside the classroom, largely, right? So that if you are like dedicated to libraries and going and getting a job working in libraries, or
Whatever
whatever you had you playing basketball, putting balls in hoops. No, but you, I assume you were doing theater as well, like not just in the classroom. Absolutely. Or another way to think about it is that your training isn't done when you graduate with a degree, and so you have to keep learning. Which is to say that it's the kind of thing that you are, or again, that you're engaged in a bunch of things outside of the classroom as you are thinking about how to, strategize a vision to get into the gallery as a curator. Like all of these things is stuff that is in relation to, but always beyond the kind of thing that's happening in the classroom. And that is generally true of liberal arts degrees. One of the things that I think you said, Alaine, that is really, really important, to that moment when you're like, oh, this is what it can be like to be interested in something. Especially with people who, that follow that. That is perhaps like, if you're like, I'm going to be a librarian. That's awesome. Some of us have that. Some of us don't. I was definitely not one of those people who did. I had no idea what I was going to, I thought for a while I was going to be in and out of school as quick and fast as possible. I wanted to run away from the academy as hard as possible. I took one class in my department my first fall and thought, in the department I eventually graduated with a degree from, and thought, I'm never doing that again. That was awful, and somehow am condemned to try to reproduce that now as my entire life. So, but the way you get there is by following that feeling of, oh, this is what it's like to be interested in something. And so that has to happen in the classroom, but it also has to happen outside the classroom. And that's a really, really important thing. The other thing that I want to say and I think this is maybe more, Theresa and Alaine, your experience than yours, Dylan, but is that there are always acts of improvisation that come after a degree. Even if you think you're on a path, you know that where the grooves are, there's still going to be a bunch of trying to figure some stuff out, putting your round shape into some square holes to figure out how you're going to do that.
Dylan ended up in music.
Dylan did up at the
Come
music
on.
library,
There
but
was
there is,
books.
but then there is a different kind of career path, right?
Yeah.
Which is the kind that I actually did, which is you go to school, you get an advanced degree, that there's a kind of credentialing that happens. That Theresa sounds like you're fighting against and successfully, which is awesome. But that there is also definitely, but even in those career paths where it looks like, okay, so I need the Master of Library Science or the MI degree in order to become a librarian, and then there's still the hustle outside of that in order to be able to develop a set of and it's really around developing your set of interests. What is it that lights you up in order to be able to keep doing something to build a career? That's really where that comes from. So that even if you're not in the performing arts hustle of trying to figure out where that next grant is going to come from, there's still something about you can pursue those maybe perhaps more predictable or stable career paths, but they still nevertheless require a kind of proactive and creative and improvisatory relationship to building a career. And then the final thing that I want to say is that the skills that you learn in cinema studies show up in surprising ways. And I am especially thinking about the grant writing part of what you're doing, which is that, writing papers develops a set of skills kind of indirectly. It develops a habit of mind, which is very important, but that you're going to get a series of skills and they're gonna show up as relevant in some really surprising ways, and you should be open to the kind of lateral thinking and transfer of the kind of skills that you develop in your academic life, so that even though we're not training you for a specific job, the kinds of skills and the kinds of things that you learn in classrooms have relevance that will show up in ways that are unpredictable, and that's actually a really important component of what it's like to get a liberal arts degree. So I think those are a couple of key takeaways, which is just be proactive, be prepared to improvise, think creatively, and follow what lights you up.
I would say I didn't. I was like, oh, I have no time, which is true. No one has any time, but I didn't participate in this as much as I really participated in the theater program, and I played a lot of sports, so I had to participate there, but I didn't participate in Innis in talks or events or clubs or things like that. And I have a lot of people in my life from the other two because I participated more, but I don't have a lot of cinema people in my life. So now I go out and I find them and I do that now, but I wish I had them. I wish I had known my classmates more. I wish I would have participated in activities, clubs, anything like that in order to find those like-minded people who support you, whose skill sets combined, who will cheer you on and keep you going, and also have the same work ethic and same aesthetic values or same drive. You will lean on your people, because when you get out in the world, you're like, oh, where'd you go? And they say somewhere else, no judgment, but anywhere else. But they'll say somewhere else, and you go, okay, cool, makes sense. And then you'll meet other UT people, and you'll lock eyes, and you'll know what's up, and then you'll be able to work together.
Can I gloss something from that, which is there's a really mercenary way to think about networking that's very alienated and alienating.
Yeah.
Don't do that one.
Yeah.
Right? Don't approach
And
real
don't
life
let it
as though
be
it's
you.
LinkedIn. Yeah. But there is nevertheless something really important, and I think Dylan and your experience also speaks to this, of staying in touch with and finding yourself inside a community of people, and that going to Sinsu parties, Sinsu doesn't throw parties, but going to parties where cinema studies students hang out is actually a form of to be really, you get social capital out of U of T. There's a really alienated version of that, but then there's also a real, we are in a community, and follow the utopian version of that.
And I will just say, like, about the mental shift, like networking, like it's awful, right? It's so cringy, and the idea of like putting yourself out there, like, I honest to God, like we put our heads down and we just did our work, and like we'd be like, oh, our show's tomorrow. We forgot to tell anyone. Like, well, I was like, I didn't care if people came. I just wanted to make sure the work was good. And then, 10 years later, I was like, oh, where's my fans? And I was like, you don't tell anyone. You have work. Like that, you tell your mom. Like, that's it. That's not good enough. Like, that's not how you get momentum. That's not how you get going. You have to have people on board, on side, all that kind of stuff. But if you think about it in the non-networking cringy way, as in like, I have a passion. Do you have a passion? Do we have shared interests? How can I help you? How can you help me? Let's all get there together. That's much easier when you have people. Like, I'm used to teams. Like, I know in theater, like, you have two pennies to rub together to make an entire show. So we know we have to have each other's back in order to get things done. If you have that kind of attitude, like, I have people in my community now, I have no idea how they help me or I help them. But if they need something, they need someone to go to their screening or cheer them on. Maybe 10 years down the line, we'll work together. Maybe we won't. It doesn't really matter. But like, it's a really hard business, probably any of these jobs, that having people that you feel more like a team or a collaborative attitude about versus like, I'll trade you this much social capital for your social capital. Like, it's a horrible energy that when you meet people who have it, you'll never want to go to a networking thing ever again. So just find the people that you enjoy being around, that you have shared interests with.
Awesome. Dylan.
Yeah, for one, I would echo the exact same thing. I wish that I had been more involved in like the student clubs for sure. And I was thinking about this before these questions came my way, because now that I'm at Media Commons, I see these very dedicated groups coming in week after week, these film clubs. I mean, we have student-run screenings happening at Media Commons more nights of the week than not, which is unbelievable to me. Often requesting 16 millimeter prints from our collection. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing to see a bunch of like-minded people coming together and watching films, and I should have done that more, for sure. The other thing is that I never published anything, and I wish that I had published at least something. Occasionally, TAs, professors would encourage me to do so. I would just take it as a compliment and be flattered, but then I would be nervous about submitting something and being subject to criticism. Plus, I was struggling to see the value in it, but I see the value now. I mean, one paper that I wrote that kind of bugs me now that I didn't try to get it published. It was for the cult cinema class. It was I was comparing VHS collectors versus Blu-ray collectors. They have its preferences. I did a lot of interviews, a lot of original research. I did very well on this. It's totally relevant to my current position, but at the time I didn't bother to try to get it published.
Let's go back.
The landscape has changed so much with that one. I would have to start from scratch. Yeah.
Yeah, echoing a lot of what you both have said about connecting with taking advantage of the resources and the opportunities at the university. I took advantage of a research opportunity program through, I think, a French studies stream and internships for like academic credit. But because I came into cinema studies a little bit later in my degree, one regret is like not having joined sooner, because I think all in all I took like maybe 3 classes outside of like the required 100 or 200 class, and I just wished I had more time to spend, because the classes and seminars that I did take opened up so many publishing, research, critical engagement opportunities for me personally, that I feel like if I had more time to write essays in a really focused manner, that would have opened me to new forms of research and new networks. Luckily, I did get into those streams and seminars. So then I ended up getting to know some of the people at Silo or Setsu, albeit like in the last month of like the degree, but those are still connections that are very like close and dear to me. Like we're all at different institutions now, and sometimes we just check in and maybe we look for partnership opportunities, whether it's like CFBC or hot dogs or tip. I had the opportunity through my work to co-present a program at TIFF Wavelengths in February, and that really was like a combination of just all my time that I spent here at studies.
I am going to voice one final regret that people have that I didn't have because of the particular kind of keener that I was. And maybe y'all don't have, but I know lots of students do, which is that they didn't talk to faculty in office hours more often. It is our job to talk to you. I promise you, we are not as scary in person. I occasionally I will do things like force students to come talk to me in office hours, and it's always so anxious on the lead up. And I promise you, we got into this job because we're the kind of nerds that want to talk to people about movies all the time. And so you should definitely, even if you don't totally know what it is that you want to talk to a professor in, if you're in a class, especially past 105, where there aren't 400 of you, and you should make some time to just go visit the professor at office hours once a semester to talk about what's interesting to you in that class, because we're here long term, right? So there are definitely connections to be had, and also stuff to learn, where you find that someone, like, I would never tell a student to publish something as a compliment. I would tell a student to publish something because
Yes,
it should be published. But yeah, having that kind of relationship with your faculty can be really, really helpful.
And if I can add something,
Yeah.
is don't be afraid to ask questions, like whether it's the faculty or to other staff at the university. Like if you don't ask, you won't know what is available, and you also won't know what is possible.
I went to the classes of YouTube, and really I had collaborators that they knew some things, but mostly I would say like self-taught in that way. Like I took all of my design skills and all of my, and then we'd be like, what does, and to be honest, I went along, I'd be like, so how do you do this? Like, how do you do this to people? And they'd be like, well, you could do it like that, or you could do it like this. Some people do it like that. I'm like, cool, that's not helpful. Like, I want to know how you do it. And nobody had answers exactly like that. So I'd be like, okay, let me use my own brain. Let me take some of the information that I have about call sheets and shot lists and framing. And because of spending so much time, specifically with my creative partner, analyzing things, because we went to U of T, because our theater degree and my cinema degree made us able to break it down, then we would just kind of like work backwards. So we want it to look like this. What are our references? What do we like? What is the speed? Then we talk to our DOP and we're like, here's all the images that we have. Here's all the major research that we've done about, like, this is what we want it to look like. Then he'd show us different lenses. Then we would critique it, and then we'd like, that doesn't work. Then when it came to editing, I learned by doing. Like, so much of it is learned by doing. And then when you're like, oh God, I have a question I don't know, find someone, I ask, I do research. But mostly it's you take your own knowledge about your own aesthetic values, and then you just find the technical answers to get those things done.
It's much easier to go in that direction than the other direction, to go from a set of technical skills to aesthetic values.
Yes.
And so this is why
100%.
maybe liberal arts degree, not cinema studies, not film school.
Yeah.
Also, there are a bunch of student organizations on campus that support filmmaking, and
Yeah.
there's also an organization called LIFT, the Liaison of Independent
Yeah.
Filmmakers in Toronto, which does
And
technical.
women in film and television also does.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of courses you can take.
And actually, we do now have a couple of courses by our resident new faculty filmmaker, Brett Story, who teaches studies in cinema and media practice. So that's another place to get those skills.
I think for me, sort of going at the level that you are. So like when we first started making our show, I was like bringing my pals on, people I knew I could work with, people I knew who had the work ethic, also never had the experience. And my friend, they went to graphic design school, they went to industrial design school. I'd worked with them before. And I go, you're going to come on, you're going to be art director. He goes, I've never done that before. I go, no one on this set has done any of these jobs before. So just don't worry. And whatever it is, we'll figure it out. That was the attitude that we brought to set every day. And that's because that's who we were. That's the vibe that we were creating. But if you work in one where everyone else does know what they're doing and you don't, you do all of your prep work and then you just be really honest and really like I was first ADing on a friend's short film. I have never technically first AD'd before. And we worked with a DOP who really knew what they were doing, like really, really knew. And I was like, I keep missing, like, they're expecting me to be doing this and I'm over here doing this. Or we didn't have a transparency between their expectations because they've been on set lots and lots of times. And so they think set works like this. And I'm over here in a collaborative, like I have 6 hats on. You're looking at me like I'm just the first AD. I'm also 6 other things. So your expectations of me and what I can deliver are now different. So I would say to get ahead of that, you do all your prep work, you know as much as you can know, but on set, things happen no matter what. I've really learned to accept you can do all the prep you can do, and you will still discover things that you can't plan for. You're like, now there's a new problem. And I just have to be honest in the moment. I have to work with the other people and I have to say positive, like fake enough that I can be like, I know I'm smart. So we'll find our way through. And I don't need to freak out. Yeah, I've never done this before. Yeah, I've never seen this problem before. It doesn't matter. Nobody on the set has ever necessarily seen exactly that collaboration of problems before either. So just being open, being, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm going to lean on you in these 3 ways. I'm happy to pick up what you tell me, but I will have to check in. Just being open and upfront about those things so that you can manage the people's expectations of what they think you should know. And if you don't know what they think you should know, then you're like, why do they look disappointed all the time? And then you're like, they're operating under a different set of rules and guides that I'm not aware of this second. So let me check in with them a bit more. Let me just be like, okay, this is how I think the day is going to operate, or this is what I'm bringing to the table. Am I missing anything? Is there anything else you need from me? Like that sort of like open, like egoless, right? It's scary to be like, I don't know. And it's a scary way to present yourself to people, especially if not everyone's like, hey, you don't know, I don't know, whatever, let's make it work. Like if they don't have that attitude. But the more you could be like, I don't know, it's okay. Like I'm gonna learn quick, I'm gonna get it done. I have no worries about my capacity. There's just a bridge in the knowledge or like the specificity of what you want me to do or what should be done. And I'm happy to work to get there. I'm just being open about that. Like that attitude is much easier for people to work with.
I studied art history and cinema studies, and the learning experience is so much time is spent on close study and the reading and analyzing of what an artwork, an object, or a text can bring to how does it contribute meaning. And my work does really it very closely aligns to that. I get to, and I would say that the main difference is that I work with living artists. So working in contemporary art is very exciting because the way in which I have dialogue with artists can shape the final production of the work. So I feel like I'm actively contributing to something that is very amorphous and in development, and that's exciting. So, for example, at Mercer Union, we perform the production and commission and produce new works of contemporary art. And one exhibition that we're opening soon is actually a moving image commission, and we get to work with the artists very closely in developing the script and securing their production team in offering feedback in the editing and post production of the work. So in a way, we were acting as a producer, and I would have never learned how to do that within a classroom context. But I had some of the language and the skill sets of how to read and analyze from studies. And that's what I was really prepared for, though. Aside from working with other people and collaborating within like a process like that, is also just within like a nonprofit contemporary art context. You're also wearing lots of hats. Like I oversee and manage a team and of staff. I work with a board of directors. We fundraise. So much of the job is actually procuring the funds to be able to do the fun part of the job. So I don't spend as much time as I would like working with artists on developing the work, but it makes that part of my job so much more rewarding.
I think the thing, like, you have a thing you're interested in, let's say, and you're like, how do I get that job from there? You have to understand that most of the time you spend, I don't know, 10% of your entire career, let's say, doing exactly the thing that you love doing. Like, even when I work with the basketball coach at U of T, she's an Olympian. She's like, all I want to do is coach, but I got to spend all this time. I'm like, yeah, you're the CEO of this thing. You got to spend time with donors. You got to spend managing and booking. Da, 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 da. Like, it's going to take you a long time to make your thing that you want to do 10% of the time, 100% of the time, or 50% of the time. So you go and you take the wide breadth of skills, hopefully, that you have coming out of U of T that you don't even know that you have, that like writing essays translates to grants, like producing, an event at U of T goes into producing large things. Like, you will utilize every skill that you have in a variety of different ways. Try this job, and they're like, I can't stand that job. I really don't like doing that. I can do it, but I don't want to do it. So let me go over here. Like, there's a bunch. I looked at my 10 hats and I was like, I really love design. Should I be a designer? And then I looked at what a designer does, and oh, I can't. That's not for me. Okay, well, I really like directing. Okay, so that I have the energy and stamina to sit on set for 16 hours, but I don't have the energy and stamina to like sit and do design and the thing. Like, that doesn't give me the life in my spine to make me sit upright for 16 hours. So I got to keep picking the thing that will keep me alive and awake. So all the other things I do because I have to, until I can get back to the thing that I really want to do over and over and over again, until I can sort of get rid of the things that I can't handle doing, and I can start paying other people to do them and start narrowing down. Actually, no, now I have the experience and the skill set, they're going to match at some point. But your first, who knows, 2, 5, 10 years is just kind of using everything you've got to keep moving together in order to get closer to, I can define it now.
No, I do have one bit of advice though here too, which is do not. I maybe have even given you this exact advice before, but I'm going to give the whole room. Which is do not underestimate the power of the informational interview. You can talk to people who do a job that you think you might be interested in.
Sure.
Take them out for coffee. There's a like big alumni network of people, and I promise you, people who come through cinema studies will be very happy to talk to cinema studies undergrads for a half an hour about what they do with themselves. And that really helps you understand, like, oh, actually, the day in, day out of being this, of having this job isn't like the fantasy that I had of it. And maybe that's actually so that actually talking to people who are in positions can help you imagine more concretely the actual practice of a particular career. So I think that's I very nearly dropped out of grad school. I actually like paid to take the LSAT and was thinking about becoming a lawyer and did a couple of informational interviews with different kinds of lawyers, and I stayed in grad school. That's actually not how that went, but it's a fun joke.
So you come at it, in my opinion, from a lot of different ways. First, you start with your idea. You start, what do I want to make? What do I have to say? What is my seed? Then you start looking around at the landscape. There's OAC, TAC, CAC, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, arts councils, and they have a variety of different ones. So you'll really want to get to know their websites, and they list all the different type of grants, and you start getting familiar with like what is in your wheelhouse. Then there's a bunch of like Telefilm, Bell Fund, Ontario Creates, IPF, like there's a whole bunch of film, digital film, short films, web series, all that. Then you start to get to know that landscape. They have, especially in the film section, they have webinars about how to make an application, all this kind of stuff. Like they do a lot, like every season they do info sessions, and all their info sessions are usually online too, so you can always look back. So you get to know what the landscape of the grants that you may need are, but you take your seed and then you start kind of looking and you're like, okay, how does this function in relationship to this? Where is this going to marry? And it's actually, I think it's a really beautiful thing because as students, you're used to deadlines, structure, they want this from you, blah, blah, blah. So most of the time we have seeds and we force ourselves to expand that seed into something based on this grant. This grant tells us we want to know this, we got to know that. So because we have a deadline and a structure, take our seed and we start pushing it in there. Doesn't mean that's what you're going to end up with. It doesn't, once you get the grant, or everything always changes and they know that. And so it's okay. You don't have to feel like, oh, I'm faking that, don't push a square peg into a round hole if it doesn't work. But you be in relationship to what the reality and what the grant is asking you. So you start shaping it that way. Then you get the money. Yay. And then you're like, oh, shoot, I told them I was going to do this and I haven't written a word yet. And now I got 6 weeks to pull it off. Okay. Then you start finding, okay, how am I going to actually do this? And like, I asked for 16K and I got 8K. Well, now the project has got to change. So what can I do, or where can I find that other money? Am I going to invest money of my own? Am I going to find it from my aunt? Am I going to do a GoFundMe? Like, no, I'm going to reduce the size of the project and I'm going to make it a little sampler to the thing that I want. And I'm going to leverage that to get larger money to do another thing later. Or you can hold on to that grant, try and find 2 more other grants so you can make. It's a crazy thing in grants. If you have money, they'll give you more money. If you have no money, they're like, I don't know, you don't have any money. But once you get the first one, you can hold that as leverage to be like, see, I'm supported. Won't you support me? Because if you support me, then I'll have all the support that I need to make the thing I want. But you got to play, there's deadlines, and you got to play this whole monopoly game. And, you may have to use that money before the next 2 rounds. And they don't make it easy because all of their deadlines kind of like never line up to anything that makes sense. And it could be 2.5 years from your seed of an idea to applying to a grant, getting denied, getting the next thing, holding on to that. Like, it's a long dance. It can be a long dance. And I always say about that, like, we have a philosophy in our company about having like many turtles trying to get to the sea. So we have, this one is over here. He hasn't even made it to the grant. He's just an idea. He's a post-it on the wall. And this one over here, he's gone through 3. And this one over here, like, he's got 4 grants behind him. Look at him go. He's going to make it to the sea and hopefully not get eaten by that seagull. And, you have to sort of diversify your attempt at it, because if you have one turtle and you really want him to go and that's all you're looking at, all the no's are going to feel crushing. The slowness of each project is going to get to you. Like, all of that kind of thing can kind of like damper your spirit. And it just simply is. Like, the last grant that we got, there was a 16% success rate. I happened to get it. It was a beautiful moment. It will help me get through the next 2 years making things. And as I'm doing that, I will be putting more turtles towards the sea. And I will be playing this game until probably infinity. But if you have the right attitude about it and you have the right sort of like, I take my skill set, my creative partner, every time we get a no, she's like, oh, yeah, another no. Anyways. And she spent like 100 hours on that grant, like something crazy. And I will say one more thing about grants. People will tell you that this grant is for the development of whatever it is that you want, right? They're going to pay you to figure it out. Spend the time knowing. They will not give you the money if you don't know. Do not believe the lies. It's all a lie. It's a lie that you don't have to know deeply, thousands of hours of thinking and constructing. You don't have to tell them. He's like, give me the money to write this season. You better have a structure, and you already have to know. Because how can you write the paper that says it's about this, and this is the meaning of the thing, and this is why it's so important. You have to give me the money. How could you know the answers of all that if you haven't done all that work before you even apply for the grant? Even though the grant is for you to do the work, like, it doesn't make sense like that. So don't buy into their propaganda. It's not. We know that. We know you have to do the work before you even show up. You have to be the most like prepared. Oh my God, this person, they know all the answers, and look at how, and they're only asking for this little bit to start the thing. It's like, yeah, well, I've done 2,000 hours of work before I even got to asking you for $10.
Theresa, do you have grants in your world?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Big grant writing. And yeah, just to add to what Alaine was saying, the arts councils, they're mostly, for projects, they're mostly juried by other artists. So think about how your application reads to other people. Talk to program officers.
Mhm.
Most of these program officers are listed on the website. You can talk to them about, they won't offer feedback on like the content necessarily of your grant, but if you ask specific questions about strategy and approach, they can offer feedback. And before you submit the grant, you should spend like hours working on this, by the way. Make sure to get some other people to take a look at it. Get some fresh eyes on it. Make sure that the project is feasible, first of all, and the budget is clear. As Alaine said, like a lot of times, projects with some secured funding is like fun, but you can use, for instance, your own funds as like just something to put on the budget for now. You can say you're self-funding, and that will make the project seem more attractive. You can count for your own time. Like calculate what your time is worth. Put that into the budget. Make sure to always pay yourself. And sometimes these applications, you do need to submit like them a couple of times. You need to try again, and then you'll get the results you're looking for. We submitted a grant earlier in the for an exhibition. We didn't get it the first round. We got some feedback from the program officer, and we submitted again, and we got it.
So, one thing, you will get rejections a lot more than you think you are going to. I do too, right? Like in my work as a professor, I get grant rejections. I get papers rejected. It happens. The other thing is, it is a gift to yourself if you can do this when you are writing your papers. You should always be, when you're writing any kind, you should be thinking about the audience for that paper. So one of the most important things is imagining who is reading the grant and under what conditions. There's an overworked artist who's not getting paid to adjudicate the grant, who has a stack of 40 grants to get through as quickly as possible. Give them baby food. Don't challenge the reader. This is not where you're going to give your most finely wrought Derridian deconstruction of a thing. You are going to give short sentences with simple words, clarity and ease and interest. So, but when you're writing your papers, part of what you're doing is developing a habit of theory of mind for a reader. And so if you're approaching your paper writing that way as in undergraduate work, that's going to serve you really well no matter what you're doing in terms of your reading.
Yeah, it's regarded upon like your CV definitely is like a factor, and the arts councils they do consider like first time applicants, like, and they especially if you already qualify as like as an applicant, just build up your CV with as much relevant information as possible, whether it's like your experience, other grants and awards that you've received. Maybe they're not grants, maybe they're like student awards, things that you've taken advantage as a student here at U of T. Those all count.
And just last thing about that, if you're like new or unknown, you need to stack your pile with some other people who have proven themselves in whatever you're doing. So if you want to make something, you get a director that's done something, attach their name, or a producer, or this person, doesn't matter. Like we had mentors that came on all of our projects that say, yes, we vouch for these people. We've been in the industry for 50 years and we vouch for them. So if we vouch for them, you can vouch for them. Like that is when you don't have your own credits yet, when you haven't got your first grant, it's leveraging that kind of, and those were true relationships. That was not a networky thing. We showed up at their workshop every day, 5 years, and paid to help us, and and then they would come on our grants, and they would get paid to help us make sure our art was good.
Which there's a general principle, which is like mentors too, which is another sort of going back to questions about networking, right? To try to find people who have walked the path that you are trying to walk and to develop genuine, non-extractive, not schmoozy relationships with them. Because and often people who have done that and have had any kind of difficulty are going to want to like share their wisdom and really develop relationships with young people who are up and coming in the fields in which they work.
I literally have 4 mentors right now, like 4 completely different areas of the business.
I have a former student who was like had developed through Women in Film and Television like a mentor, like a kind of formal mentorship program, and she was like, I want to be a cinematographer. So she's like working with a cinematographer, and the cinematographer, after like months of mentoring, was like, I don't think you want to be a cinematographer. I think you want to be a director. And so now she directs a kids television show.
If you feel like your interests fall into these 2 different camps, talking to people from those specialized areas will likely actually give you some insight into what they think from their perspective, what you could bring to that field or to a different field. So, for example, hearing my perspective is that maybe working at like a consulate as a cultural attaché could be interesting because you bring a global perspective to cinema studies. But someone else within a more specialized field that tackles with like international relations may have a different perspective.
The two things that I will say to that. First is really spend some real time taking stock of yourself and what you like doing and what about it you like doing as you're studying, right? To really think like, what's the part of this that turns me on? Is it the talking about it in the classroom? Is it going and to the library and find it like I like to go book shopping in libraries, right? Just like I like they keep me warm in my office. I have a whole bookshelf of just library books. But you know, but is it that part? Is it the actually crafting sentences? Is it the watching of something? Is it the devising an advocacy plan? Like, what of the things that you're doing and you're learning that you're really excited about? What are the activities that you're doing that are really exciting to you? And to figure out, I mean, again, we have career counselors on staff at the University of Toronto, the Career Center. It's like once you've done that work of trying to think about what is it that really turns your crank, how do you build a career out of that? The first step is to figure out which parts are the things that actually really matter to you, which goes back to the like, figure out when you feel alive and then just always lean into that because that's the thing that's going to get you
I had
somewhere good.
Tons of people who are IR and theater or cinema, and it's a great overlap. It is having that knowledge and that viewpoint and bringing it into either being like a programmer at film fests or like a curator of this, or you want to make your own stories. Like there is cause for that overlap again and again. So you're not in a bad place, but finding which like there's 100 different aspects that you could follow that combine those two. So finding the one that lights you up, that's really the goal.
Thank you so much. Let's give an applause to our panelists.